Christian sexual ethics are important, but there is a huge problem with Christian sexual ethics. The aspect of shaming people for sexual practices and the aspect of elevating purity above all. Humans are impure creatures. They are imperfect. Some aspects of humanity are necessarily darker. Certain people have desires that they shouldn't have, or certain people have desires that they should have but are relatively disordered. And Christian sexual ethics often focuses on that and harps on that to an extensive expectation. Not that it's wrong, of course. Not that it's incorrect. Of course, we should avoid teen pregnancies. We should avoid disordered relationships. But at the same time, shaming sexual acts or sex acts or certain things can cause numerous deleterious effects. For example, let's say a Christian rails about homosexuality or divorce or whatever. And then he himself is caught having sex with a minor. What sort of attitude, what sort of belief, what sort of situation can you say can justify that man? Obviously, being a teacher, being put in the place of a leadership, much is required. You cannot demand something you cannot do yourself. If you demand perfection, you must be more than perfect. Because if you don't, you lie about yourself. You lie about what people should do. You lie about everything. Then you scandalize the faith. You turn people away from the faith because you are unable to not only handle yourself, but even you're so focused on controlling others that you cannot even acknowledge the fact that the laws you advocate for are harming others. People need to take preachers, Christians, priests need to take a more pastoral attitude towards sex. Sex crimes and sexual sins are important to acknowledge, and they're important to be railed against. Of course, we don't want problems with sexual crimes, sexual violence, sexual misconduct. But at the same time, we should acknowledge that if you cannot obey the laws, you shouldn't be speaking on the subject. Even me, I struggle with sex. I struggle with impure thoughts. I struggle with all these things. But at the same time, I'm not demanding from others that they obey my specific version of morality. I'm not perfect. And no one is. But no one should demand perfection unless they themselves are either God themselves or representatives of God who are without sin. Remember when they attempted to stone a woman for adultery? Jesus himself said, "He without sin cast the first stone." If he even says that to a person who's committed adultery, someone who's betrayed the trust of their partner and has been caught in the act having sex with another man, then who are you to judge a woman for having becoming pregnant out of wedlock when you yourself have struggled with the same sins that lead to stuff like that? Be careful when you demand certain things from other people. Be careful when you demand someone obey your specific morality. Because unless you are perfect, unless you are without sin, you have no right to demand how people behave. You can only control yourself, your family members, people close to you. I will never demand that other people who are outside of my home, outside of my group, outside of my culture, do anything that is outside of their belief frames or outside of their moral specter. I believe that sin is an important to be preached about. Sin is an important to rail against. Yet at the same time, I believe that I should be an example if I want to demand perfection from others. So don't demand perfection unless you are without sin. And if you struggle with other sins that are unrelated to it, remember, be empathetic. You struggle with sin, so others may struggle with different sins. Watch their path, forgive them for their sins. You ask for God to forgive you, and pray that you do the right thing in your life. Thank you.